Well, why do they live rent-free in your mind? Certain exes, old flames, they're camping out there long after the breakup. So nearly everyone at some point finds themselves mentally revisiting a conversation, a memory, or an unresolved moment with a past partner. Sometimes it's just their face or their body. These thoughts can intrude uninvited and stick around far longer than we expect. The question isn't just why these memories linger, but what makes them so much harder to shake once they come up. This talk today will break down the science and psychology behind why exes live rent-free in your mind. We'll explore how intrusive thoughts work, what makes certain memories especially sticky, and what research says about moving forward from this mess. Hey everyone, I'm Henry, and you're watching Day 63 on my channel, Henry's Millions, where I dive deep into psychology, spirituality, and the science of the mind, helping you explore and master the forces that shape your life. All right, let's understand intrusive thoughts. This is going to be another long video, half an hour. It's for your benefit. So watch it in chunks if you have to, but power through it because it's going to help you or help someone else that you can share the video with. All right, let's go. Let's understand what these intrusive thoughts are. They are sudden, unwanted flashes of memory, doubt, or worry that catch you off guard. You're minding your own business, and then the memory of your ex's comment, a snapshot of a fight, or a what-if moment you thought you'd buried long ago. These thoughts often arrive uninvited, and they can linger in your awareness, as you probably are aware, refusing to leave no matter how much you try to focus on something else or distract yourself. Now, psychologists describe intrusive thoughts as mental events that appear involuntarily and often generate some level of distress, anxiety, or discomfort. These intrusions commandeer, take over your attention against your will. So you might remember advice like, just stop thinking about it, just move on. But these rarely work. The mind doesn't work that way. Research shows that intrusive thoughts, especially after breakups, are universal. This might make you feel better out there. Nearly 90% of people experience them at some point. After a relationship ends, these mental pop-ups often focus obsessively on the ex. What was said? What wasn't said? What could have been done differently? Has that happened to you? I've been there. Sometimes it's regret, sometimes longing, sometimes a sense of unfinished business. I've actually heard those words from somebody right after the breakup. We have some unfinished business. I still don't know what that is, and it's been a long time. So it's crucial to understand that these thoughts don't mean something is broken or wrong with you. They're part of how the human mind processes stress, attachment, and loss. So according to contemporary cognitive behavioral theory, we're going to talk a lot about this, it's CBT, intrusive thoughts only become problematic when we react to them. Pay attention to this. Every sentence counts here. They only become problematic when we react to them, worrying about their presence, trying desperately to make them stop, or using them to question our deepest selves. You see a bazillion things every single day, and you don't think twice about it. You see the road, you see the floor, you see the wall. You don't think twice about 99.9% of everything you see. But these things, we give them so much of our attention and our energy, and they're emotionally driven. So keep both of these things in mind. We want to go there from here. I know it's hard work. All right, stay with me here. Let's go. All right, the harder you fight these thoughts, the worse they become. So this ironic boomerang effect, as it's called, was well documented by psychologist Daniel Wegner, whose white bear experiments showed that trying to suppress a thought actually makes your mind more likely to scan for its return. That's why insisting, don't think about my ex, almost always leads to more intrusive memories. So Wegner showed that the more you try not to think of a forbidden topic, the more your brain scans for violations, amplifying the thought. So it's called the ironic process theory. That's what he coined the term. So thought suppression involves two mental processes. Let me explain this to you. A conscious operating process that tries to direct your mind away. Like, I'll think about cats instead of bears, right? It's conscious. That's the first step in the mental process. And then an unconscious monitoring process. Remember, we used to talk a lot about unconscious, the adaptive unconscious. I have a lot of videos. You can go back and check them out after this one. All right. So the unconscious monitoring process that scans for the unwanted thought to make sure it's not there. Like, am I thinking about a bear yet? Am I thinking about a bear yet? When you tell yourself not to dwell on an X, this internal monitoring system makes their memory pop up more frequently. Great. Just what we needed, right? Oh, that's terrible. You may wonder how intrusive thoughts are different from rumination or worrying. I think this is a good point, right? Because we hear rumination, ruminating. Intrusions are spontaneous, brief flashes. A lot of thoughts come to your mind spontaneously. We have no control over it. But rumination is the analytic process that sustains and feeds on those flashes. So they work together, they work in concert. And you know, rumination, a lot of that is in your control. You ruminate, but the intrusive thoughts actually trigger or cause the rumination. So intrusive thoughts are like the sparks, and rumination is like the fire that keeps burning after the initial burst. So from Sigmund Freud's unfinished psychic business, oh, I didn't know. I don't even think she knew about that. She said, we have unfinished business. Little did we know that Freud was talking about this decades before. So Freud mentioned unfinished psychic business to modern neuroscience. I don't think she's watching this video. Luckily. The consensus remains. The mind is designed to flag things that feel urgent, unresolved, or tied to our relationships and self-worth. That's what Freud talked about, unfinished psychic business. Particularly in the context of Exes, intrusive thoughts are often your mind's way of working through loss, meaning, and vulnerability. Persistent intrusive thoughts often emerge from the brain's categorical tendency to prioritize unresolved or emotionally charged information, especially social bonds and attachment concerns. I can imagine some of you enjoying a cup of coffee right now as we discuss these not so great topics, but they're so useful to you, you know it. Or a friend. If you know a friend that went through a breakup or something pretty terrible recently, you've got to share this video with them. So work by Solovskis and Menzies. These are authors whose works I researched in preparation of this talk for you today. The work has shown these intrusions are not inherently problematic. The intrusion itself, these thoughts popping up by themselves, even if you're ex, they're not inherently problematic in and of themselves. But their persistence is almost always a product of how we interpret the thought rather than its content. Okay, so the key is in the interpretation, the meaning we assign to it. I'm going to talk about this later. You're going to want to stick around and hear this. Okay, so why do these exes linger? You know, either they got rid of us or we sure as heck got rid of them. Why the heck are they lingering? The social brain and emotional memory. Let's talk about that for a bit. So our brains are hardwired to put emotional connections at the top of their priority list. Makes sense. From our earliest moments, the mind is shaped by who we bond with for survival, for comfort, and for meaning. That wiring doesn't vanish when a relationship ends. Dan Siegel's interpersonal neurobiology shows our relationships, I think he was a psychologist whose work that I researched as well. Interpersonal neurobiology shows our relationships literally sculpt the brain's structure The relationships sculpt the brain's structure, altering connection patterns and firing rates. As I'm helping you get over these intrusive thoughts of your dreadful ex, we're also educating ourselves. What could be better? All right, so recalling a former partner doesn't trigger random memories. Neuroscience demonstrates that breakups activate the most emotional and memory-focused regions of the brain. The amygdala, which processes fear and longing, and the hippocampus, which catalogs the past. These circuits, they tag relationship experiences with meaning and intensity. That's why even an ordinary phrase or a favorite place can trigger these powerful recollections. I want to mention some things about attachment theory, right? I think it's very relevant here. So attachment theory adds another dimension to this. Bowlby and Ainsworth, these are researchers on the topic, showed that the attachment styles we develop, secure, anxious, avoidant, you've heard of them, they not only shape how we relate to others, but also how likely we are to mentally revisit those relationships after they're gone. I bet you did not know that. I certainly didn't. So if your attachment styles lean anxious, you may be especially sensitive to loss and ambiguity. Your mind works overtime, seeking explanations and resolve. So anxious attachment, sometimes called anxious preoccupied in adults, is one of the insecure styles, anxious attachment. It usually develops when a caregiver is inconsistent, sometimes loving and available, sometimes distant or unpredictable. So how it works, as a child you learn that closeness is possible but unreliable. So you become hypervigilant to signs of abandonment. And then as an adult, this shows up as high sensitivity to rejection, strong fear of being left, craving closeness, but worrying it won't last. So why does it lead to persistent memory loops? When an anxious avoidant style person loses a relationship or senses distance or ambiguity, the mind naturally tries to resolve the uncertainty. It does this by replaying interactions, analyzing signs, imagining explanations, and seeking reassurance. People with anxious attachment patterns are especially vulnerable to persistent, intrusive thoughts about validation, loyalty, and loss. It's interesting, if you've known somebody like this, I have experience with this. So, and you could see these things being exhibited or coming up. People don't want you to delete things, or they want to keep going back over records or messages over and over again. I mean, we don't want to mix what's normal with not normal. I mean, balance, right? Something balance is normal. So people. All right, so stressful relational events, such as a messy breakup or even a perceived slight, they can trigger these extended loops of mental rehearsal. All right, let's talk about the brain science of stubborn thoughts. I had a video about stubbornness just days ago. It's a great video. If you know someone stubborn, send it over to them. The video will do the work for you. All right, so understanding why certain thoughts about exes don't fade is as much a neuroscience question as it is psychological. And there are several key brain regions that are involved. There's the prefrontal cortex, which is focus and control, the amygdala, which you're probably very well aware of it, the emotional center, and the hippocampus for memory. So these serve as the control center for processing intrusive thoughts. Henry, why do I need to know all this nonsense? I could be thinking about my ex instead. It's all going to come together. There's some more brain parts here. The anterior cingulate cortex, which detects something being unresolved, activates when these thoughts arise. This network runs a simulation, replaying events or imagined outcomes in the quest for meaning or closure. So you are normal. The thoughts you're having, other people have had similar types of thoughts, and It's very well studied. So you're replaying events or imagined outcomes in the quest for meaning or closure. These two words at the end are very important, meaning and closure, as you'll see more. So the cognitive concept, by the way, of metacognition, I want to mention that. Thinking about your thinking, right? We sometimes do that. It's called metacognition. It helps explain recursive loops. So efforts to monitor whether you've gotten over it lead to recursive self-surveillance. And that creates more rumination and attention to the very thoughts you want to fade out, right? You're having a lot of thoughts about your ex day after day after day. And then you try to kind of do a reality check or a metacognition, right? So you're thinking, hey, how often am I thinking about this? So thinking like that, it makes it more frequent. You just want to forget about it. So let's continue here. So recent studies, they add even more nuance. There's something called the Broca's area in the brain. Broca's area, I don't know why they called it that. It's associated with inner speech. This is interesting. So it becomes unusually active during intrusive thoughts. It's an area in your brain. It's associated with inner speech. It becomes unusually active during intrusive thoughts. This explains the sensation of an unsilenceable internal monologue, replaying or inventing conversations with your ex, sometimes loudest and at the least convenient times. Oh God, I can hear the obnoxious crazy making right now. Don't worry, she's not watching. All right, social and romantic rejection isn't just in your head. Rejection catalyzes a stress response, the body's fight or flight system, and it's as active during heartbreak as it is during physical danger. So that's why rejection or loss leads to racing hearts, stomach aches, and hypervigilance. Hypervigilance, by the way, is the biological system's persistent scanning mental activity and bodily readiness to act or seeking repair or reconciliation. All right, so let's talk about the role of the body in breakup recovery and intrusive thoughts. Nobody is giving you this information. If you've ever seen all of this together anywhere on YouTube, send me the link. There's just no way. I've been thinking really long and hard about this because I've gone through so much of this myself. I talk about topics that I've experienced myself and I want to benefit from. So I've dealt with intrusive thoughts for a very long time about exes. And so I know that there is obviously, you're living with the mental component. You know that there's a heartbreak component. You know how the heart combines or interacts with the mind, right? You got the heartache. The mind starts thinking about why you got the heartache. And then the mind, sometimes you get these intrusive thoughts and then you get the heartache. So they're constantly compounding each other. There is a third element. I spent months sitting with this and working on these things. There is the body element. We're going to talk about that. So this is, I'm very excited about this, that I was actually able to find some things out there, some study or research out there on the topic. So getting over breakup, let's back up for a minute, involves distinct stages, right? So there's the heartbreak, emotional recovery, and a unique, often underappreciated bodily experience that persists and influences mental states. So your body is influencing your mental states. So when people reflect on the process of moving on from a breakup, they often notice a physical dimension to their pain. Like, I'm not being poetic here. I felt it, and that's why I looked it up. So there is substantial evidence that breakup distress is registered in the body as much as in the mind. Physical stress response. So studies show that rumination and emotional agony after attachment loss are linked with measurable bodily stress responses. I bet If you're paying attention to this still right now, because I know people's attention spans are terrible. I think the average is like 5-6 minutes that most people will spend on a video. If you're paying attention to this right now, it has a dual role of helping you not think of your ex. So there's another benefit there. Focus. All right, let's go. So an emotional rumination and emotional agony. After attachment loss, they're linked with measurable bodily stress responses like elevated cortisol levels. That's a stress hormone, and heightened physiological arousal. Okay, so that means that your experience of pain and suffering after a loss isn't just in your head, it is experienced in your body. So there's this body-mind feedback loop, and I'm going to show you how the body triggers the thoughts. I'll explain it to you. I'm going to show you. So the mind and body work in a tightly interconnected loop after an attachment ends. When your body is in a heightened state of alert or discomfort, such as tension, anxiety, a racing heart, it acts as a constant internal reminder, priming your brain to revisit the breakup. And research shows that heightened bodily arousal can directly elicit unwanted, intrusive thoughts about the lost partner. So your body essentially signals to your mind, hey, something unresolved needs your attention. So the stronger the bodily pain or agitation, the more likely the mind will be triggered to produce distressing associations, memories, or questions about your ex, perpetuating this cycle of unwanted thoughts. There's also an overlap of social and physical pain. So the neuroscience demonstrates that social pain, like rejection and loss, activates some of the same neural pathways as physical pain. So this shared circuitry means that romantic loss isn't just an emotional or cognitive wound. It is literally processed by the body's pain systems. And the process of attachment involves not just mental bonding, but biochemistry. Oxytocin, the stress hormones in brainstem circuits regulate physical sensations and drive our needs for closeness. So in certain cases, compulsive behaviors or obsessive cycles observed after breakup, such as repeated checking, constant mental rehearsal, may be responses to intense bodily sensations. People instinctively attempt to solve bodily discomfort by mentally revisiting the breakup, seeking resolution. So how do you self-care here? How do we, this whole thing seems like a cluster mess. How do we self-care, Henry? Strategies that target both the mind and the body. You got CBT, you can look this up, but you got mindful acceptance, exercise, relaxation, breath work. They can help you recover quicker after an attachment loss. So take care of yourself. All right, we want to talk about relationship OCD. Yeah, I was surprised. I was surprised about this. So for some, look, intrusive thoughts for some people are manageable, but for others, these thoughts are a huge source of distress, right? Hours lost to analysis, reassurance seeking, repeated review of the past. So get this. There's something called the relationship obsessive compulsive disorder, ROCD. So there's been an explosion in disorders. There's a disorder for everything today, for everything you could think of. Even if you listen to music, the same song over and over again, right? They've got a word for that. What is that? Stim listening? I don't know what it is. They're turning everything into a disorder, apparently. So ROCD. So it's relentless involuntary doubts and mental checking about past or current relationships. It's acknowledged as irrational, but impossible to dismiss. So this relationship OCD is more than overthinking. It's a cycle of obsessional doubts and compulsive efforts for certainty or relief. And a defining characteristic of it is something called ego dystonia. It's the awareness that persistent thoughts don't reflect one's true beliefs or desires. All right, so intrusive thoughts often spiral into rumination, right? Sustained, repetitive engagement with the memory, feeding into anxiety and avoidance. And the initial unwanted thoughts sparks a cascade. You're reviewing texts, scrutinizing conversations, seeking external reassurance, replaying events mentally in search of closure. We all want closure, right? We really don't need closure, but it is very helpful. But it's not absolutely necessary. I mean, if someone's that bad to you and you running for the hills, you sure as heck don't want to go back and seek any kind of closure. So research by Tsiolkovsky and Menzies, these are prominent figures in the literature, shows that the urge to achieve certainty about an ex, about oneself, or the relationship's end prolongs the spiral. Attempts at mental checking or rehearsing only create more room for doubt to reappear. So who the heck in their right mind is going to love after this video? I'm going to get it in the comments. I'm just kidding. All right, let's talk about meaning making, appraisal. This is very, very helpful here. This is an exciting point of this research. The meaning making, the appraisal. This is the key and the power of self-talk. So many believe it's a depth of feeling that keeps exes stuck in the mind. Like, I must have loved them even more than I thought. Rest assured, it's not that. So clinical psychology shows that it's not the mental pop-up, but what comes next. How you judge and appraise the thought that determines your suffering, okay? It's not the thought of them itself. It's what comes next, how you're appraising it, that causes your suffering. I'm going to pause here so you can really get that point. So the mind is a meaning-making machine. When an unwanted memory about an ex appears, feelings of confusion or annoyance often give way to self-judgment. Like, why am I still thinking about this? Or what's wrong with me? So this secondary interpretation, the appraisal, is where suffering truly begins. So CBT shows that distress usually comes not from the original thought, but from the meaning you assign to it. So for instance, you get a thought and then you think the meaning you assign to it, oh, this must mean that I'm broken, or I'll never get over this. So these create shame and rumination. They turn a fleeting idea into an emotional snare. So research shows that people who ascribe catastrophic significance to their thoughts, like believing just having this thought means I'm damaged, they're the most likely to experience sustained distress. So they spiral into rumination, interrogating why these thoughts persist, instead of acknowledging that the mind often revisits unfinished emotional business. We have some unfinished business. I'm still waiting. So appraisals, they sit at the heart of this process in cognitive therapy. Fundamental CBT teaching is the distinction between the intrusive thought, the initial neutral mental content, so the intrusive thought, and the automatic thought or the appraisal, the rapidly forming unconscious meaning that flows. Guys, pay attention to this. Whoever's still with me, whoever really is here to learn, there's the automatic thought that is triggered by the intrusive thought. It's unconscious. I don't want to say it's always unconscious, but it is largely unconscious. You get the intrusive thought by itself, it's harmless. But then you've got these automatic thoughts that are unconscious, and that's where the real work is. You want to dig deep. You want to sit with yourself. You want to figure out what this automatic thinking is, the meaning that you're making out of the intrusive thoughts you're getting. That's so crucial. So in therapy, you can hardly progress until you learn to distinguish between these two. So for example, after a brief mental image of an ex, an automatic thought may arise. This means that I've failed to move on. Just bad example, right? But so the distress doesn't stem from the intrusion, but from this rapid appraisal. This is a huge point in CBT, in cognitive behavior therapy. This is really important, what we're discussing. So I commend you. If you're still here with me, good for you. So CBT further suggests that efforts to dispute the content of the intrusive thought without recognizing and challenging the automatic thought are often ineffective. And I read time and again in the literature that focusing on the intrusive thought is not the solution. That actually could be more problematic. Working with the intrusive thought is not the solution. It's what's surrounding that. It's what's triggered after that. It's the automatic thoughts, the unconscious, the automatic thoughts that arise unconsciously, but you can figure out what they are. All right, what about uncertainty? That's another key word here. Uncertainty, lack of closure, and how the brain craves answers. So after a breakup, it isn't just loss that lingers. It's the question of why, and all the unfinished business it leaves behind. Uncertainty sustains the mind's drive for resolution, replaying memories and rewriting arguments in search of a satisfying answer. I really want you to think about this in your past relationship, the person who you're having intrusive thoughts about. Is there uncertainty, right? When things are crystal clear about what happened, who did what, whose fault was what, and why things are the way they are, it's easier. But if there is uncertainty about what you did or what you think you could have done or should have done or what they did or why things happened the way they did or where your relationship stands in limbo or if you're ever going to see them again, blah, blah, blah. If there is uncertainty, I mean, you know that it's causing much more suffering, many more intrusive thoughts than if there wasn't any. This is crucial here. I don't know if you're able to mitigate that on your own. I'm sure you can. I mean, to reduce the uncertainty, you have to arrive at your own conclusions, at your own level of understanding to reduce the uncertainty. That's for another talk. But so uncertainty sustains the mind's drive for resolution, right? Replaying memories, rewriting arguments in search of a satisfying answer. So there's cognitive models that emphasize the role of intolerance of uncertainty in these cases. So uncertainty doesn't just frustrate, it sustains threat appraisals long past the point at which answers are possible. And crucially, it is not the intrusive thought itself, as we said, but the following automatic thoughts and appraisals, the instant, often unconscious interpretations that drive distress and compulsive behaviors. So the neuroscientific research confirms that your brain craves narratives and coherence. So when a story lacks closure, when the reasons and meanings behind an ending are unclear, the cognitive systems remain on alert. The search for certainty gives rise to what-ifs and endless mental loops. And these unresolved questions, what if I said this? Did they ever love me? Oh, do you know something about that? I do. They feed the persistence of intrusive thoughts. Did they ever love you? A prominent study found a strong correlation between relationship indecision and the frequency of intrusive ex-related memories. By the way, I do have a video that will tell you if somebody loved you or not, or if you can look back. That was months ago. Just search love on my channel. All right. Study found strong correlation between relationship indecision and the frequency of intrusive ex-related memories. So the quest for closure is not merely emotional, it's hardwired. So staying with ambiguity is painful, right? This uncertainty, the ambiguity, we want closure. And many search texts, they replay conversations, they mine social media for explanations. Unfortunately, the ambiguity of why did it end this way often haunts people more than the act of the loss itself. And the persistence of these memories is even more pronounced when uncertainty is involved. In the absence of closure, your mind's monitoring systems remain active, searching for cues, for explanations, or for meaning. And this intolerance of uncertainty keeps cognitive and emotional systems looping, sustaining focus on unresolved relationship themes. So there's studies that show ambiguity after a breakup strongly predicts repeated intrusive memories. It's a finding replicated in both cognitive and clinical settings. It's useful. So on a biological level, your brain is trying to resolve signals, mismatches between what you hoped, what you experienced, and the deflating arrival of new reality. And when definitive closure is impossible, the related cognitive programs just keep running. So learning to accept that not every question can be answered and allowing for ambiguity, paradoxically, lessens the grip of persistent mental rehearsal. Okay, so ambiguity means more open to more than one interpretation, not having an obvious meaning. All right, so tools and interventions for reclaiming your mental space. So in psychology, we see that you can absolutely change your relationship to intrusive thoughts and thereby reduce their power. CBT, one of the best studied interventions, helps you observe your thoughts objectively, question their accuracy, and gently challenge catastrophic interpretations. It's catastrophizing. So for instance, when you notice, I'll never get over this breakup, for example, instead of fighting it, CBT encourages seeing it as a mental event, a passing cloud, not a permanent reality. There's another form of therapy, ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy. By the way, if you need help, I strongly suggest you find a qualified therapist, but hopefully this information today will be helpful. So ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy, it builds on the CBT, teaching you to allow thoughts and feelings to come and go without being hooked by analysis. So ACT creates psychological distance, helping you recognize, oh, I'm having the thought that I'll never move on, which subtly shifts your relationship to the idea. So the science is clear. Forcibly suppressing thoughts tends to backfire, while observing them without judgment gradually reduces their intensity. And you can't control every memory that visits, but you can reshape how you respond to them. And with practice, patience, and self-awareness, even the most persistent mental tenets, your ex, fade away. So some memories stay for a night, some for months, others far too long. But as you engage with your mind in ways we touched on, you can gain agency over the internal narrative. And the voices and stories that echo within your mind need not control your life story moving forward. So YouTube thinks you should watch this video next as best for viewer recommendation. Don't look at me. Remember to like and subscribe to my channel, Henry's Millions. Every time.